Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing another tier list for AD Carry, and this is going to be patch 11.14. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Starts around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually goes till about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. And we do fresh tier lists, patch notes, and topical guides like best one trick, how to macro better, how to micro better, and all sorts of other guides on the channel. So be sure to like, subscribe, check all that out. We also cover Total War Warhammer. We're going to be getting back into that soon. And I've been doing some Burning Crusade Classic as well. Rating as a Restoration Druid if you're interested in seeing that. That's Wednesdays and Thursdays before the main stream, starting around 9:30. A little pre-stream. And I'm going to be releasing some Final Fantasy XIV content as well pretty soon. So lots and lots of stuff on the channel. Mostly League, but some other stuff too if you want to check out, my take on some other games as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So I think that AD Carry in general is in kind of a rough state in solo queue overall. If we look, there aren't that many standouts statistically. If we look at win rates of like mainstream AD carries, Ashe and Vayne really are the highest at like 52, where some of the other roles, you'll see champs in the 53 to 54% range. But not only that, but I think there is quite a large hierarchy and a really big fall off from the top tier champs down to the bottom. If you watched my support tier list, which you should go check that out, there were quite a few that were like in the A and especially in the B tier, stuff that's like playable, and if you're good on it, you can make it work. Type of thing without being too disadvantaged, right? As long as you have the experience, you're getting appropriate builds, and it's a good team comp and all that stuff. But AD carries almost always one of the most narrow roles in terms of there are certain champions that are just way higher than others on any given patch because they're all trying to do the same thing for the most part. They're all ranged physical damage dealers versus, with support, you've got like Peeler tanks, engage tanks, AP champions, enchanters. You have all these different things that supports can do for their team. But AD carry, for the most part, except in some, wonky team comps with like Ziggs or something, AD carry. I forgot to put Ziggs on there. He's probably B. We'll go ahead and throw him up there. But other than that, they're all trying to do the same thing. And so that means that just depending on which items are popular and which kinds of compositions are popular, there are just going to be certain champions that are just going to be way stronger because they outcompete the other champions at because they just have one task. There are no tanks in the ADC role that are super popular, right? There are no sustained like AP damage mages outside of, unless you consider like Kog'Maw or Corki or something. So that just means that ADC in general, it's really, really important to try to play the top tier stuff if you want to win for the most part. More so than almost any other role, just because it's so pigeonholed into what its task is in most games. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get in here. So I think that Samira is going to be the strongest overall in solo queue. And remember that I'm evaluating this from like silver to platinum elo range, so obviously it's going to be a little different at pro. We will look at some pro statistics as we go through this, and we'll look at some, just solo queue statistics. So at the top end, it's going to change a little bit. This is just what I think is really strong, like silver to platinum. And I think Samira is the number one up there, even though her win rate's not amazing. And, a few of these top-end champs, their win rate's not going to be, like, eye-popping. But I just think the potential that she has to just take over a game is so incredibly high. And she does have a fairly high skill cap. People can get into trouble with her because they'll just dash in too early, You really have to understand when you should go into melee and when you should stay far back on Samira, and a lot of people just mess that up, and that drags the win rate down. But I think the potential's there, and the main reason why is just how she scales with lifesteal and raw AD, particularly with her ultimate, is still just way, way too strong. She can heal up almost her whole bar just off of one item with that ultimate, while also just completely eradicating everybody. And I think that's something that makes her a little bit different from someone like Katarina in that she's so durable. And I think she has fairly high base stats too. I don't remember her base stats, but she's just basically impossible to kill, and she just puts out a ton of sustained damage, single target and multi-target in fights. And a lot of it has to do with her interaction with lifesteal. Like I said, her ultimate, I believe it still gives you 100% lifesteal. They may have nerfed that a little bit, but it's a lot. Every single shot is lifesteal. and it can crit on her ultimate as well, and that's going to add additional lifesteal. So when you combine that with Immortal Shield Bow, it gives you a tremendous amount of lifesteal, and it gives you attack damage and critical strike. So it's kind of everything that you want. And the fact that you get this massive shield means that it makes it really, really hard to burst her out. So you can't blow her up immediately, which means she's going to have more chances to stack up Conquer, to stack up her passive for her ultimate, to lifesteal more, to get a couple more cooldowns. So it just makes her really, really strong. And she can also get plated steel caps. And this is a thing that you're going to see with a lot of kind of the top-end champions, is they can get defensive items while still putting out quite a lot of damage as well. So it really takes away the assassination potential that other champs might have on the AD carry, which is traditionally one of the main ways you deal with AD carries, right? Is you get to the back line, you CC them, and then everyone just blows them up. But with some of these top-end champions like Samira, like Ezreal, it's very, very difficult to do that. So she can take steel caps, which gives her a huge edge in a lot of matchups, because she doesn't need the attack speed, because most of her damage is on her abilities, and like her ult, I don't believe scales with attack speed. It might, but she just doesn't need attack speed as much as other champions do. So that opens her up to be able to take shield bow, steel caps, and then she can also get the collector, because again, doesn't need the attack speed as much, and lethality is really good because her base damage is pretty high on her ultimate. And then you also get to just execute those people at the 5% health. Make sure you get the kill. Make sure you're the one snowballing, because that ult ticks so quickly. It virtually guarantees you're going to get your collector procs, and you get the extra damage off of it. So it's an extremely powerful item. It has kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of champs that used to get it, or at least the champs that do get it have fallen out of favor, like Jhin, who's still pretty good. We'll talk about him later. But she's one of the best collector users out there, especially with shield bow. So that's tremendous. Then you have the option of either going for just like the super damage with Infinity Edge if you want that, or you can even go Bloodthirster and just like double down on the shields and the healing, and then you really become impossible to kill. So she just has several options in terms of the domination, and she's a great abuser of Conquer and Triumph for those resets. It's still just way too much healing in the game, in my opinion. And then she gets pretty much the free lethality off of sudden impact and eyeball collection. So she just does exceptionally well. Even if you hold her down, I've seen her go like 0-5, you know, in lane, and then just outside of the lane in a team fight, she gets a couple of cleanup kills, and she's right back in it. So she's very, very strong on 1 or 2 items. Really good at skirmishing, really good at team fighting, very difficult to kill. So that's why she has my top spot, is just the raw damage and the AoE potential combined with her just tankiness based on the items that she builds. I think it's just super strong right now. So don't let that win rate fool you. Win rates do matter to some extent, but the potential of her is so high. And it's the same thing with Ezreal, I think. He's still very, very strong. Yes, they did nerf the Divine Sunder interaction with him, but he still is extremely difficult to deal with when you have Divine Sunder plus Muramana, because now he's strong off of 1 item and 2 items. And this is just such a match made in heaven for Ezreal. It's got the 20 ability haste on it. It's got the raw AD. It's got the health, so he's difficult to assassinate, kind of like Samira. Has built-in healing, and it does a percentage of the target's maximum health, 9% max health. There's a minimum that's not listed there as well. I think it's a minimum of 150%, so it still is more than a normal Sheen proc. Not as much as a, in some situations, maybe not as much as Trinity Force procs, but it's still really high, and gives you the survivability, and gives you the sustain off of that. Yeah, there it is. It spells it out right there. 150% base, but no more than 250%. Oh, that's to monsters. I thought it had a minimum against champs too, but whatever. It still does a lot of damage. And now that you can get Sheen so early as well at 700, you don't have to wait for 1100 on that. That means that usually on your first back, you can come back with a Sheen and already start, you know, poking pretty hard. So all of this is just really, really good for him. And then you get to go for the Manamune next, or Manamune, or however you pronounce it. And this does have 15 ability haste on it, which is good. It has been nerfed since the beginning, but then it was rebuffed to kind of be about midway between when it was super OP early on in the season, and then worthless after the nerf. So It's still pretty good. It stacks up faster. It does cost more mana than the old school Ezreal item, but the completed amount costs more mana. But the tier itself costs a lot less at 400, so that means you don't have to go as far out of your way in the early game as you used to. So this just means that he can become relevant a lot faster in the game, just off of going Sheen and tier. Those combined used to be the cost of just Sheen last season, right? Sheen was 1100. Oh, thank you, Rory. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. She handed me my phone back. And then, you know, to get Sheen and tier last season was close to 2,000 gold. Now to get both of them is about 1,100. So that means that you can be, you know, far more relevant a lot earlier in the game. And these Ionian boots are a lot stronger too. People kind of sleep on this a little bit, but that 20 ability haste and the summoner spell cooldown is massive compared to what it used to be. I think it was 10% CDR last season. Now ability haste is a different stat than CDR, but it's still really, really good. And then you have options at the third item. A lot of people have been opting for Frozen Heart lately. And if they have a lot of AD champions, or if no one else on your team is getting Frozen Heart, this is actually a pretty good bargain, because you're still going to do quite a bit of damage, with just the Mana Immune procs and the Divine Sunder procs on your Q. You're still going to be hitting pretty hard, but now you've got this AoE aura, which just slows down everybody that auto-attacks on the enemy team and makes it even harder to kill you with the 80 armor. And the 400 mana does convert over to some amount, like somewhere between 10 to 15 AD extra, so you do get a little bit of bonus value off of that. And they did lower the cost by a bit as well, so now it's only 2,500 to complete that. This says Duskblade, but you'd have to get that instead of Divine Sunder, so I don't know when you would get that fourth. That's got to be some kind of... Oh, I guess if you're going Essence Reaver first, and then eventually you work your way to Duskblade. I mean, that's possible. He does have several item options, I guess. Trinity's another one that if you just want the raw damage, you don't care as much. I mean, it is only 200 less health. So Trinity's okay. It doesn't have the healing, but it does give you a little bit better ability to kite with the threefold strike. Does more damage on the Qs, obviously, but I think Divine Sunder is still where I'd go most of the time. But yeah, it's really hard to kill. Has a lot of mobility with his E. He can farm safely with his Q if your support's roaming or you're just in a really bad lane. You know, in team fights, he can hang really far back, so it's very, very difficult to engage on him while still putting out like pretty good damage. So I think he's very solid. Now in pro, his win rate, you know, is not stellar right now. It's 46%, and then in solo queue, it's like 50%. So kind of like Samira, he is on the difficult side to play and to get your positioning correctly, because it's so easy to get baited into like E-ing forward to try to kill somebody. Kind of like with Samira, like jumping in at the wrong time to try to go for kills. So the positioning, it requires some patience and some, you know, knowledge of what's going on in the game. But overall, I think his potential is extremely high, and he's a very good champion right now. And if I'm saying that, you know he's good, right? Because I have been a critic of Ezreal for a very long time. But the main reason that I critique him is he takes too long to come online. Historically, he required 2 items, and they were very slow and inefficient, and they fixed that. Right now, he gets Sheen way earlier, gets tier earlier, and all of those components just smooth out his scaling so much more, to where now he's actually relevant before 20 minutes into the game, and he can scale, you know, up from there. So I think he's in a very good position right now. And then Jinx is the last one that I'll mention for solo queue that I think is still very good. Her win rate I don't think is insane. It's like 51%, but if you can protect her, she just does so much sustained damage over time. I'm kind of surprised people are taking Conquer on her instead of Lethal Tempo, but it does give you a little bit of extra sustain if you do that, which is nice. But yeah, it's just the same old stuff, just Kraken. Now, some people are going Phantom Dancer instead of Hurricane. They did buff Phantom Dancer a few patches ago. It is a little bit better than Hurricane. So I guess against single target, that's going to be better if you're going to be doing a lot of skirmishing. That is nice, and the movement speed's pretty good. I still think that Hurricane is, you know, top-notch for team fights, but there does seem to be a lot more single target focus. You need to kill that hyper-fed Irelia or, you know, Jax or whatever. So I guess a lot of comps, I don't know. It's skirmishing and or like threat, like single, like you have to kill that person. Like the single person is super fed and you need to take them down type of stuff. So I guess Phantom Dancer is better for those situations. But yeah, she's just my pick for the best like long range hyper carry, tons of damage, and that's really the name of the game. Is she just always has such huge range early on. She can push early with the rockets. She can stay out of trouble. She's got chompers to help a little bit against engage. She's still going to be vulnerable, but more vulnerable than Ezreal or Samira. But she does have that really long range and that hyper carry status, right? Where if you just start chucking those rockets, you can just completely blast people in team fights from a long distance, right? Samira can do it up close. Ezreal can do single target from afar. It's skill shot based, but Jinx will just run over the whole team if she gets too far ahead. So excellent pairing with something like a Lulu, like a Yumi. Jinx is still going to be really strong right now. Okay, and then moving down the list a little bit here. Tristana, I think, is really good if you can snowball early, and I think she's the best early game aggressive ADC right now. So she pairs really well with things like a Leona, like a Nautilus, who are both very popular, Thresh, just anything that can get in there, start a fight. She jumps in, drops the bomb on them, and she's going to win almost every fight if she lands the jump. And her support's already in there. It's going to force a flash, and a lot of times she can kill you anyways because she can just flash after you, finish the bomb combo, and then jump again to re-engage on top of you. So extremely dangerous early on, very snowbally. Did have a couple of buffs over time. Now they did nerf Hail of Blades a little bit. I don't think it matters that much in the early game. They just nerfed the cooldown on it, I think. So you usually kill them in one Hail of Blades rotation anyways in the early games. I don't think that's going to matter, but yeah, she's very strong if you snowball. Now, if you don't, if you're into a losing lane with her, it can be really bad because your explosive shot is going to make it very difficult for you to last hit under tower because it's going to give all the creeps this really uneven amount of HP. And she's very short range, so she can get zoned off the wave very easily. If she gets backed down early by like a Jhin, Leona, or something like that, if you have like a Janna, Tristana. So just make sure, or try to ensure if you can, if you're going to play Trist, that your support is playing something that's going to be aggressive in the lane. But she can take over if you do that. She's very good at taking plates and snowballing advantages with her bombs as well. And then later on in the game, she has pretty nice range with good sort of single target damage. Not as much as Jinx, I think. Not as much potential as Jinx or Twitch or even Kog'Maw. But it's up there. Because she's not going to get Hurricane. She doesn't have any AoE splash damage. But she does get quite a bit of extra attack speed. And her Q offers some really nice damage as well. Her base damage is also extremely high on her ultimate. So when you get in there level 6, especially if you've already got a kill or two and you just jump on them, it's like 300 damage at level 1 with like no items, or level 6 rather. So strongest snowball potential, I think, of anybody out there, at least in solo queue. Very, very strong. Okay, so nothing really new with her. It's just Kraken. I think it's Kraken, and then she actually does go for that weird proc damage item, Stormrazor. She's like the only champ in the game that gets that item, I think, just about. There might be another one, but she does like the Stormrazor, and the reason for that is the slow, just to keep people still while she is able to finish off that bomb proc to get the reset. So she can be very safe too. That's another thing, is you can use your R, to peel some of these divers back late game, and you can use that W not only to jump away, but also to buffer people that are hitting you with things. So you can jump through a blitz hook, or jump through, any number of engages. You can even jump through a Nautilus missile, which makes her one of the best champions against Nautilus because she has one of the few answers just built into her kit. You just wait until that split second before the missile hits you, then use your W to jump away, and it won't hit you. So she does have some very good matchups, potentially, but you got to make sure you're going to win the lane because it's going to feel awful if you don't. Okay, so next up we have Samira. Samira is a very strong ADC. She's like the only champ in the game that gets that item, I think, just about. There might be another one, but she does like the Stormrazor, and the reason for that is the slow, just to keep people still while she is able to finish off that bomb proc to get the reset. So she can be very safe too. That's another thing, is you can use your R, to peel some of these divers back late game, and you can use that W. Not only to jump away, but also to buffer people that are hitting you with things. So you can even jump through a Nautilus missile, which makes her one of the best champions against Nautilus because she has one of the few answers just built into her kit. You just wait until that split second before the missile hits you, then use your W to jump away, and it won't hit you. So she does have some very good matchups, potentially, but you got to make sure you're going to win the lane because it's going to feel awful if you don't. Okay, and then Kog'Maw is another one whose win rate has been around like 51 or 52%, and he has kind of developed a bit of a weird build that has become effective. Now, fortunately, this Randuin's has fallen off. I really don't like that on Kog'Maw, but I can kind of get on board with the Wit's End. It's a little weird because he doesn't get a mythic for a while, but the on-hit damage and the attack speed is very good, and it does give you that combination of offense and defense that's so OP. On Ezreal, on Samira, these items that just sort of make it difficult to kill you while not really, blunting your offensive capabilities. You see that all the time with the Bruisers right now too, right? Where they just do a ton of damage, but they also have all these defensive tools. Well, Kog'Maw gets that with Wit's End. So you get the on-hit damage, which is pretty good. You get the extra attack speed, attack damage. You get the 50 magic resist, which is very nice in a lot of matchups. Makes it more difficult to assassinate him. And you get that movement speed. I think this is one thing that's really underappreciated is 20% movement speed for 2 seconds. And that's basically permanent. As long as you keep auto-attacking, there's no cooldown. Sorry, not 20%, 20 flat. So, what's that, like 6% or something-ish? Total movement speed, but that's very relevant when you don't have any other movement speed boosts to be able to kite or chase people down. It is very, very strong. So I like him, especially if you have Lulu on your team, it's a grand slam. She's fantastic with Kog'Maw, with the Whimsy to give him the movement speed, give him even more attack speed, your picks to give him that 80 on attack damage with all the extra attack speed. Then you also have your R to make it very difficult to assassinate him. So Lulu is extremely strong with Kog'Maw, but a lot of the other enchanters are too, if you can stay safe. So a lot of it with Kog'Maw is just, do you have enough peel on your team? Are you going to be able to position well? And otherwise, he's an excellent tank shredder. So if they have one of these mega tanks on their team, something like a Mundo or a Zac, or Zac's actually kind of hard to deal with because Zac can jump on you from the back line, but Leona, Tom Kench, a lot of these kind of peeler tank types of champs, he can just completely mow them over. And it looks like he's going Ginsu after Wits is one of the more popular builds, and that is very good single target. I will note that Phantom Dancer looks like it could be even stronger. But Ginsu does have a special interaction with his W where it does double proc that, so pretty good combination. I will say as well, like the Wit's End is cute and that's what everyone's getting, but Kraken is still the higher win rate item if you have appropriate protection. If they don't have a lot of AP on their team, if they don't have any magic damage, it's going to be hitting you in a fight. You really don't need the Wit's End. Like, just go ahead and get Kraken, Everyone thinks that just because the bonus damage on his W doesn't crit, that, like, critical strike is a bad stat on him. It's not. It's still good. Like, his base damage can still crit. But yeah, he's going to be probably the premier single target tank shredder champion, and he gets pretty good range too with his W, and he does a lot of magic damage, so that's great if your team has a lot of physical damage stacked up. So the difference between he and Jinx, I think, early on, is that magic damage component. Jinx is going to have better innate AoE damage off of the rockets. She also has a much, much better ult that's almost always going to get you 1 or 2 free kills in a game for people that just aren't paying attention, or that are CC'd that you kill with the ult, versus Kog'Maw's as borderline worthless. Like, you could maybe finish some people off with the ult, but it's pretty outdated. So there are some differences. And then Jinx, of course, if you do get that kill, you get a really big movement speed buff and extra attack speed, and snowballs a lot harder off of kills. So I'd say Kog'Maw's possibly better at skirmishing and just like melting single targets, especially super tanky targets. And then Jinx is probably better at team fights with a little bit more utility. But they're both very, very good long range hyper carry champs. And then we have Jhin. He's still pretty good. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. His win rate, I would imagine, is still around 50%. Yeah, it's like 51.5%. So he is good for early game aggression. I do tend to favor Tristana a little bit more right now. But the Gale Force Collector is still good. He does kind of have a hard time killing tanks, or at least really durable champions right now, but he can take care of squishies really well. His assassination potential with his long range, like R, I guess his execute potential is really high. Yeah, just his burst against squishies, I think, is a premier thing about him. He also has very good wave clear in the early game with the grenades, and he's really good to pair with stuff like Lux, Vel'Koz, Karma, a lot of these longer range poke champions, which are becoming pretty popular in support. He does complement those pretty well, because you can, if they hit him with, some kind of long range piece of something or other, then you can hit them with your W, and then that's going to let the support hit them with another one of their abilities. And then you can hit them with your abilities. You can just kind of chain that together really well long range. And it's pretty obnoxious, right? So, like, if, Lux, for instance, hits them with her E for a slow, and then you hit them with the W, then it pretty much guarantees, if Lux is paying attention, she should be able to chain her Q with your W, and that gets you in closer for an auto attack plus a grenade. Or Morgana, she binds, you finish up with the root. And the thing is, it's so long range, too, that it's so easy to follow up if your support hits any of those things. Like, you can just be hanging out on the wave, and the support can go in front of the wave and pressure them, and then if they land anything, you can follow up with the W. So, lots of really good combinations with those types of supports. So, I think he can be pretty good. It's just, he's kind of fallen off with the meta, sort of transitioning more into these bruiser champs that are a bit harder to kill. And he is still going to be relatively easy to get on. He doesn't have a dash or a flash. And he doesn't get any defensive items. So he can get assassinated. If he's not strong enough to blow up the, Zed running at him in 2 shots, he's not going to have the same level of defense as something like a Samira or an Ezreal. So, not too much new there. He can dodge stuff with Gale Force, which is cool, I guess, but he's still pretty good if you want early game aggression. And then Twitch is another one that is just always underestimated. This guy's just good. I mean, his win rate is not like super high. It's not terrible, but just no one wants to play this champ. Who wants to play a dirty rat? That, I mean, some of his skins are cool, but so much of it is people just rather play, cooler champs. The fantasy of being a sewer rat, stinking people out with your contaminate is not as cool, I guess, as being a Middle Eastern pirate or a time-traveling metrosexual guy, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, Twitch is still pretty good. Now, he does also have the option of going for this AP build, and it looks like that's what a lot of people are still getting on him. So if you do need AP on your team, he has another option with that. How it works is I think his E does split damage, like partially magic, partially AD, and then his passive poison does true damage. So he can kind of get around armor stacking a little bit there. Now, I will note that I don't know why it's recommending Nashor's Tooth, why it has it up there, because the Kraken is 3 times as popular and has a higher win rate. I guess just because Nashor's Tooth looks cooler or something, or maybe that's editor's choice. I don't know. But I feel like the Nashor's build has kind of fallen off a little bit. The main problem with the Nashor's build is, like, Nashor's itself is good, but it's like, what do you get after that? Usually you have to get Death Cap, and that's 3,600 gold. That's 2 rods. It's, like, very, very expensive. So the scaling up to that is just absolutely horrible. And you could try, like, Rift Maker, but that has a 44% win rate, so I don't know. It seems like the problem with that is this is going to take you a few seconds to stack up, but Twitch wants to kill you within 5 seconds because that's how long his ult lasts. It might last 6 seconds, but he wants to kill you quick. Like, Twitch wants fast fights. Like, because he loses a lot of his power when he doesn't have his ult available. So he just wants to roll up invisible and just delete everybody. So I still think that, and the AP used to be better when his ultimate didn't have as good of scaling, the AP that is. I don't know if it said 80 or AP, but the magic damage was better when you had more fall off from your ult, but they reduced the fall off. So when he shoots through a bunch of targets, I don't remember what it is right now, but it used to fall off dramatically, like 20% per target, and I think they made it like 10% per target. So now if you're firing through people, it's doing a lot of extra damage if you go for the traditional crit and AD. Versus before, I think a lot of people invented this AP Twitch type of build to bypass that. Or like an on-hit type of build to bypass that. Because on-hit does not get reduced by the number of targets. It's only your flat attack damage that gets reduced. The AP was really also born out of changing his Contaminate around to do like 50-50 magic damage, and they increased the AP amount on Contaminate also earlier, his E, earlier this season. So, anyways, I think crit is back into fashion. Now, it looks like Blade of the Ruined King is actually doing pretty well, the old school. I haven't seen that very much, but I could see a Blade of the Ruined King into Hurricane into Infinity Edge type of build. It's always a little weird because Blade doesn't have crit on it. So, like, with Hurricane, each bolt triggers on-hit damage. Like, I think the full amount of on-hit damage. But the 40%, the AD itself is reduced down to 40%, but the on-hit is at full effect. So that's why I think Blade's picking up steam. And another one that I have seen a Twitch doing, and I thought he was trolling, but it actually ended up working out pretty well. I think it was an enemy Twitch, was this Wit's End build. It looks a little goofy early on, but if your team does have some magic, or if the enemy team does have some magic damage, it can be good. Similar to Kog'Maw, you get a bunch of that on-hit damage. You get the extra movement speed to help you kite. But this even has more synergy because each one of those on-hits does proc off of your ultimate, and it does proc off of Hurricane. So you can get Wit's End and then Hurricane, and then you can get something, whatever, Infinity Edge or Dom. So it looks like Infinity Edge is almost always the best as a third item. So he does have some options, but I still feel, as generic as it sounds, just Kraken and a Hurricane into Infinity Edge is the way to go. And you do want to do Hurricane with him instead of Phantom Dancer. Phantom Dancer does have a higher win rate, but because not only does it sort of stack up the extra on-hit damage from Hurricane, but it also stacks your passive poison on multiple targets. So you really, really want Hurricane. And he doesn't have great wave clear either, so unlike Jinx, who already has rockets to help you wave clear a bit, Twitch really needs this to be able to wave clear, or to be able to clear raptors, or, whatever you might be trying to do. So I would definitely go Hurricane second, no matter what you do, unless it's the Nashor's AP build. But he's still really good. Lots and lots of damage, lots of range when his ultimate's up, and he can go invisible. That's the biggest thing, is especially in Silver to Platinum, people just do not respect invisibility. They will just push up in lanes, no wards, no nothing, and you just roll up and kill them over and over again. So even if you get smashed in lane, you can still dominate later. And the thing is, he may not even get smashed in lane. Like, there are some of these champions, especially like Ezreal and things like that, he can actually fight you in the lane. If you have a Leona on your team and you drop, your cask on them, your W, as soon as Leona goes in and you start auto-attacking, most people have to run, because that Contaminate will do a lot of damage on a fully stacked person in the early game. So, he is squishy and he is immobile, but if he gets to open up on you and, get a few shots off and get that poison stacking, he can be quite dangerous, especially on those back timings, right? When he backs and people don't respect it and they push up, like, maybe the AD carry, maybe the enemy AD carry is trying to just farm the wave a little bit, and their support's trying to roam mid, or their support's trying to ward, something like that. They're not in the lane. Twitch rolls up. Leona on your team is hiding in a bush and just opens on him. They're dead. So, very, very good at exploiting people's ignorance in solo queue. So he does have that, but even if you don't get a lot of freebies, he's still pretty good later on in team fights. Last few champs, don't want this to take too long. Varus has become very popular in pro. His win rate's pretty good at 55%. I have seen him do pretty well in solo queue. You have to get the right items on him, and you have to be really good at hitting your charged up Q. And it's a real skill check. So it is pretty tough, but yeah, almost everybody's going for like this Dustblade, Muramana, Serelda's Grudge type of build. So it's like an Ezreal, but it has longer range, I believe, and it hits a lot harder, so it's not as consistent. Like, there's more downtime between the Qs, but it hits really, really hard, especially with Dark Harvest and Muramana. And if you activate the W, it does like extra damage, so it can do a ton of damage, especially to squishy targets. And another thing with him is his ultimate is just very, very good in team fights, right? You just ultimate whoever's running at you, and then it forces everyone else to spread out also, or they're going to get rooted as well. So he can do quite a bit of burst damage, and he has that CC chain to go with it. And he has built-in grievous wounds off of his W, or his E. So you don't even have to buy grievous wounds if you don't want to. So that's actually a pretty big bonus too, because there's a lot of healing out there, and the way that builds are progressing, it can be pretty annoying to have to get Executioner's Calling and put yourself behind 800 gold. So he doesn't have to do that. So his sustained damage is a lot weaker than many of the other champions on this list. So if it's a full-on team fight and you don't hit anyone important with the Q and you're just forced to sit there and auto-attack, your damage is going to fall off pretty dramatically compared to, anyone else so far on this list. But if you do hit the Qs, if you have the poke, if you can maximize that CC and burst someone out, if you hit someone with your ult and then you just fully charge your Q and press W and hit them with it, with Mirror Mana proc and Dustblade and all that stuff, you're probably doing like 1,000 to 1,500 damage or something anyway, so it's kind of hard to miss if they're rooted. I've seen some solo queue players pull off that miracle, but most people are able to hit something, if it's CC'd, so I guess that does give you some level of guarantee in a team fight if you hit your ult that you're gonna probably just about delete somebody. So he is good. I just have him down a little bit just because he is very skill shot dependent. He doesn't have any defensive items he can get. He does have the R if you hit it to try to peel some of these divers off, but he just feels a little bit more vulnerable to me than something like an Ezreal or a Samira. But if you do land everything, if you manage him correctly, he is very good. So I could definitely see an argument where you would put him up in S tier if someone's really good with him. Obviously, he's S tier in Pro right now. Just the silver to platinum, I'm not entirely sold on him being that high, but he's certainly very good. And so, I could see putting him in S tier if someone's really good on him. I haven't seen him take over games by himself as much as I've seen things like Samira, Ezreal, and Jinx in the games that I've been playing. So some of that, maybe I just haven't seen enough good Varuses. The win rate's not phenomenal on him in solo queue. It's 48%. But then again, it's also not phenomenal on Ezreal or Samira. So it's 49%. So a lot of it is just up to the skill. And then Vayne's one of the last ones that I'll talk about here. She's low range. She doesn't have any AoE, but she's very, very good at YOLO Q if you get to 2 items. So if you get Kraken plus Phantom Dancer, she's extremely difficult to stop. There's a lot of sustained damage, especially against some of these bruisers and tanks, your Irelias, your Jaxes, your Camille's, Fioras, all of those types of champs. It's just, they can't get on her. It's so hard to catch this champion in the late game. Because she does have that shorter range, but she's got that tumble. She's constantly going invisible. She has Condemn to push you back. So she's one of the best kind of do-it-yourself AD carries in the late game, and she's one of the few that can split push and take those champions on late game if she has to. A lot of times you want to be with your team, but if your team comp, is calling for you to split, or to, just go pressure by yourself, then you can do that and probably beat a lot of these other skirmishers one-on-one. I don't recommend that you go split bottom without teleport when Baron's up, that type of stuff. But it does open up a few different tactical options with her. And she just does some of the highest single target sustained damage out there with a lot of mobility. So Kog'Maw does a lot too, but he's not nearly as mobile as she is. So I think she's one of the best. It's really hard to mess her up. You look at her power spike once it gets to 25 minutes and she gets that second item. It's just off to the races. So she probably is going to get dominated in lane a lot of times. So she's not that great in the laning phase. But if she can get out of lane without being too far behind, I think that she can take over later on in the game, more so than almost any other AD carry in solo queue, right? Where you're not getting as much peel, where you don't have, the tanks or the enchanters on your team to help buff you up and, all that kind of stuff. She is very good. If you do get a Lulu on your team or something like that, she's extremely good with the movement speed and attack speed buffs. But, yeah, in YOLO queue, it can be harder to get a good team, reliable team for something like a Kog'Maw or a Jinx. So their top end potential is really high, but Vayne is just kind of one of the best do-it-yourself, like I said, where you can just survive lane and then just take over the game in 20 minutes if you're not sure how your support's going to do. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. I'll just hit a couple other ones that are, maybe making the news a bit more these days. So Ziggs is like, okay, he does have a fairly high win rate. If your team needs an AP threat bottom, I think that he can be pretty good. He does have like a 53% win rate. He does take towers really well. Just the thing is, a lot of people are really bad on Ziggs. They just haven't played him a ton, and he is really skill shot dependent. Like, you have to hit that Q. And not only is the Q, like, it's not a line skill shot, right? You have to hit them, like, on the circle where they are. It's kind of like with Nami, right? So in other words, people can step forward and dodge it too. So it gives them more angles to dodge it. With normal line skill shots, right, they either have to step to the left or the right, to dodge it. But this one, they can step forward and dodge it as well. So it's just a little bit harder to hit than other things. But he does have excellent wave clear. He can really put him under tower. And especially once you get that lost chapter, mana's not really that much of an issue anymore. And you can take those, take towers extremely quickly if you're left alone. And you do a ton of damage with your ultimate. So combined with things like a Lux, where, she can bind them and then you can just throw all of your stuff on him and Lux can throw all of her stuff on him and somebody's going to die. Like, it's pretty good with those long-range poke type of champs, sort of like Jhin. So I think he can be good, but you are giving up Dragon and Baron taking power. He's just, like, super slow at that. He does take the towers, but just not the Barons. And you are very vulnerable to getting flanked. I mean, your only escape is hit him with your W, or W yourself and, like, fly out of there. But really, if he gets ganked and you don't see it coming, you're probably dead. He's very, very squishy. So he does have a high win rate. If you're really good on him, he can work, but I'd just rather play a traditional ADC right now. Kallista's very good in pro. If you're good in solo queue on her, if you can hard pressure early, I think she can be good, but she's one of the hardest ADCs to play correctly, to really take advantage of her positioning and just how fast she can, maneuver and be in the right place at the right time. So she's good, and she's doing pretty well in pro right now, but hard for a lot of people to play. Kai'Sa's just really underwhelming right now. Like, it's kind of shocking to put her this low, but I've just had her on my team and on the enemy team several times the last few days, and I don't know what it is. She's short range, and I feel like they've nerfed her damage a lot, and they nerfed her abilities. They did nerf Hail of Blades on her. It just feels like with the meta right now, it takes her a lot of items to come online, and she just doesn't do as much early or in the mid game as some of these other champs do. She does not have a lot of new toys, like Samira with the reworked shield bow, or Ezreal, with the Divine Sunder buff. Like, there just haven't been a lot of things that have been good news for her. It's been kind of just incremental bad news for her over the course of the season. And just the low range, limited single target or limited multi-target capabilities. You've got your missiles, you can get Hurricane, but it's just not the same multi-target, like, just devastation as Jinx or Samira. So she's all right. I would just honestly just rather play Vayne most of the time, and throughout a lot of the history of Kai'Sa and Vayne, when they both existed, I just would rather play Kai'Sa because she's just more versatile and all that. But I just feel like right now in solo queue, I'd rather be Vayne. There's more consistent mobility and just much better at taking down these extremely tanky champions. So she's okay, but not great. Other one, Aphelios. This one might be the one where people would want to debate me the most on this list. I just think this champ is just a dumpster fire in solo queue. Like, his win rate's not that far out of line. It's like 48%. It is one of the lowest. I think only Lucian's lower of mainstream ADC, so it is extremely low. But, I mean, is 48 really that much lower than, like, 50 on Samira? Probably not, but just, like, anecdotally, he's very squishy. He doesn't get any defensive items. He is so vulnerable to getting CC'd. Like, he's got nothing. You've got your purple gun. If they run at you, you can auto-attack them and maybe root them. Like, he's got less than Jinx. Like, Jinx at least has Chompers she can drop, and maybe get away. Kog'Maw has, like, his little toxic goo or whatever he can throw out, and maybe Kaichu, with that shovel component of Wit's End, but he really has nothing. And unless I'm forgetting something, it's pretty much just purple gun, root 'em and pray, But the payoff's not even that much. And that's what maybe people are just playing him wrong, and that's totally possible, but I'm just used to like people throwing that ultimate with the infernal or whatever, with the infernal gun, and just completely deleting everybody if it hits 3 or 4 people. I've seen that, and it didn't kill a single person in some fights. Like, maybe the Aphelios was just super far behind. But he does have a lot of different combinations with the gun. He does have that versatility. But he just feels like a sitting duck. A sitting duck who does not do enough damage. If I want to play a sitting duck, I'm going to play Kog'Maw or Jinx. I'd rather have that on my team, because they're just going to do way more damage, in my opinion. It's just easier to be consistent in putting out a lot of damage. Maybe that's the best way to phrase it. So, I do understand that he is doing very well in Pro right now. I think he's like 57% or something in Pro. And is becoming pretty popular, which is unfortunately making him popular in solo queue. But I don't know. There's just a huge, huge difference between Pro and solo queue with this champion. So I think he deserves C-list. Like, I looked over what's the win rate. I think last night on stream, it was like, what is the win rate of Aphelios in my games, both on my team and when I play against him combined? And it was like 1 in 8 the last times he's been in my games. So it's just, maybe I've just only seen bad ones on my team and the enemy team. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have the team comp for it, but he just seems extremely lackluster. Like, he's cool. He's got a lot of different abilities, but he's just vulnerable. It feels like it takes him a lot of items to come back online. And I think a lot of people just aren't building the right items on him, too. A lot of people are just getting kind of these goofy items. And I think he's still supposed to be just Kraken. Isn't it just the Kraken, Phantom Dancer? I don't even know. But I remember looking at items in these games and like, what are people building on him? People like shield bow on him? I mean, they're both bad. Kraken does have a slightly higher win rate. I say Kraken because I think it's anything that triggers like the on hit stuff. I think could trigger Kraken, like his red gun, like where he spins around and attacks a lot. I think used to trigger those attacks used to trigger Kraken for full value, and now they only do partial value. So I know that was nerfed, but I still like it's still pretty good. Okay, Hurricane. I guess Hurricane and Phantom Dancer are very similar. It looks like Collector might actually be a little bit better. It's one of those items in Infinity Edge third. But yeah, so you can play him if you want to. If you're having success on him, congratulations. I feel like you were in the minority in solo queue on this patch, but he's just been really disappointing. And some of it's because he's just so popular right now too. But anyways. Xayah can be really good, if she's paired with Rakan, and if the person's really good on Xayah. I almost always see bad Xayahs because people see that I play Rakan, and they're like, ooh, Rakan, I'm gonna play Xayah, and they never play her. They just think it's their opportunity to have some fun, No fun in my games. But I don't know, it's just, I just brings out the worst when you play Rakan. You just get a bunch of amateurs playing Xayah, but she's okay. If you're really good on her, she's okay. I still think her ultimate cooldown's really long. Senna, you could maybe move her up a little bit, maybe B-list, but feels really lackluster right now. You have to pressure really hard early. I think she's a little bit better than Caitlyn, because at least she's got her ultimate that has a lot of value in team fights, and you can make that cross-map play potentially. She's got her root, with her W, so she brings some utility, but the nerf to the souls is pretty rough, and I think when she is successful, it's with Fasting Senna, which is a very specific build that I would only do with like a duo that you really only see in like Pro and Challenger be successful. You need a very specific team comp to make it work, but anyways, she's okay. Sivir, a lot of people are going the lethality Sivir build. She's okay. She's not fantastic. I just don't know a lot of places. I guess if they have like hard engage, like a Nautilus, Leona, like she can be pretty good against that if you want to be able to peel yourself and you just don't feel like playing Ezreal. I guess you can do that. Caitlyn, if you can absolutely hard dominate early, She can be good. I think Caitlyn is low-key one of the hardest ADCs to play out there at a really optimal level, because she's basically a combo mage. You have to hit your nets, get together all your combos, you know, your animation cancels, your auto attack resets, all that stuff. She's deceptively very hard. It's much harder than just walk up and just auto attack people. Like, that's step one. You need to be doing that a lot. In your lane, you need to be landing auto attacks on the enemy, but you know, a lot of it is that subtle, you know, they step on a trap and you're able to, you know, get your auto attack and then net backwards, get a net plus a Q and then another auto attack. So it's that type of thing, right? You can't just be the Caitlyn where they step on a trap and you auto attack them once with a headshot. It has to be more than that if you're really trying to maximize her. And I'll let you in on a secret. A lot of Caitlyns in Platinum don't even put down traps. Don't even put down traps. So, maybe, again, it just is like, could be that just really bad people tend to play Caitlyn or something. I don't know. Like, auto-filled people who just want to play something safe with a lot of range, play Jinx. If you want that, you want something that's easier to play and you want to be a little bit safer but play something with long range that can carry pretty hard, Jinx. That's your simplest ADC to play that's going to be very effective. But anyways, Caitlyn can be good if you're God mode on her, but most people are not. Draven, it really pains me to put Draven down this far because I have traditionally loved Draven. It's just that the itemization on him is just bad. Like, you can't really rush Infinity Edge. Rushing Bloodthirster feels bad. You can do Kraken, but you're designed, just the way that his trading works is you just want to hit him hard, you know, once. And, you know, just go for those, like, trades to chip him down and then go for the all-in. But it's like a lot of his key items he used to get, Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, Stormrazor, all of these are really bad on him to rush. And so you're really just kind of stuck with getting these subpar mythics like Kraken that just don't really work well with his kit. And he needs the snowball early, so he needs that first item to be very strong. So I have seen Dravens do all right, but he has no multi-target capabilities. He scales pretty poorly with attack speed because he loses a lot of damage if it's not a spinny axe. So there just are not a lot of items that are designed, you know, really well for what he's trying to do. Maybe like Dustblade or something could work. I don't really know. I mean, what are people actually building on him? It just feels like he just doesn't work right now. I mean, he does have a 51% win rate, so something's working, but I guess Shield Bow is what people are doing. Lifesteal is very good on him. Dustblade does have a high win rate. Gale Force would be one that could be pretty good. And then Collector. So there's stuff, but I don't know. He feels a little bit weaker than in the past. And then Lucian is okay. I said we were done, like, what, 5 minutes ago. I am going through these last ones pretty quickly, though. But Lucian does have the double shot. Seems like he should be really aggressive early. I just feel like there are just better champs if you want to bully people early, right? Like your Tristanas, your Jhins, even Draven. Lucian just doesn't have a lot of those cute interactions that he used to have with the double shots. And I don't remember what they changed about him to make some of those things bad. He was, like, really good in mid lane for, like, the first half of the season, or at least I was seeing him in mid lane, and he had a pretty large pro presence in mid lane for a little while there. But as far as solo lanes, it's just that short range, like 500 range, and just not, I don't know. It just felt a little lackluster, just the items and stuff that he was getting. But anyways, then we have Corki, the Everfrost, ever permanent, evergreen, you know, D-lister, F-lister if they had an F on here. Just don't play this guy in bot lane. You see him sometimes in mid lane. He can be effective in some matchups, but he just has no attack speed scaling. His abilities are just really, really old. I think he should be on the chopping block for a rework because it just doesn't make any sense. A lot of his abilities, just in terms of like an ADC at least. But anyways, okay. Well, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Go check out the support tier list if you're interested in that. I might put out some more tier lists over the next couple of days as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll be streaming tonight around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to join us, and we'll see you then. Have a good day.